Hello guys, welcome back to CODEIN. So last time we have discussed about how do we define list and how do we work with loops, for loop and the while loop. Now today we are going to learn about how we can declare our own function and perform some actions on the program based upon our functionality. So what are functions, how do we call a function, what is the basic functionality of the arguments, all we are going to learn in this lesson. So guys, if you like my video, do like, share and subscribe to my channel. Now what is a function? So when we talk about function basically means performing some task based upon some single statement that we call. Like in the Python program, whenever the program we are running, we are using a print function. So basically the function of the print function is that it is used to display a statement. Whatever we represent in the form of double quotes in that print function or whatever we call in that print function, it will be displayed to us. So that function is a predefined function, means which is already built in the library of the Python shell. Similarly, we have some functions which we can define on our own that are known as functions which are known as user-defined function. We have a basic syntax for defining a user-defined function in Python. We define it with writing def, which means definition of the function name. Def is basically used to define the definition of the function, that what task we want to perform in that particular function. Now, as we can see that the syntax of a function is def function name. So now when we are defining any function, we need to write the first keyword is def, then the name of the function, then we need to end it with a colon. So now let us take an example that we are going to write into a Python shell is, I am taking an example of defining my first function. So I have named it at one func function. That is the name of the function. We can give whatever function name that we want to give to a function. So I am given this name. Then I have written a print statement that is the my first function. So when I'm calling about my first function, that means whenever I will call this function, my first function will be presented. So now, then after that I have written a statement one function and just the parenthesis. So what is the purpose of this? When we are talking about one function, that is basically the calling of the function. So when we are talking about the calling of the function basically involves calling that function and performing the particular task in the program. You can see that whenever I will call the one function, so before that we need to know what is the calling of a function. Like we define some variables if we want to store any value or if we want to perform any action on the variable. Similarly, when we are calling the function, we are calling that particular function what we have defined. Like in the defined function, what I have written, just a print message that my first function will be printed. So whenever I am writing this code in the Python shell, you can see that when I will execute it, I will get the desired output like my first function. So this way we are calling the function as well as defining the function. Next part that comes in function is the function arguments. So when we are talking about function arguments, arguments basically means adding something to the function. For example, if you want to give some value to the function, like when it is called. So when we are talking about function argument, the function argument definition basically says the function definition which we define included no parameters, but when we define a function with some parameter, that is called as the argument of the function. So the parameters were that we need to write in the parentheses. Now parentheses of the function were like we have written def one func. So we had some parentheses. Similarly, if we want to add some arguments to the function, basically arguments are added to those functions in which we want to perform some action. Like if we want to perform addition, if we want to perform subtraction, or any of the function that we want to perform in a function, we use the arguments. So how do we work with arguments? When we are working with arguments, we simply need to define the same function, just we will differentiate with the argument list. So we can give as many number of arguments that we want to give in a function. So here what we are using two arguments. We are just giving two arguments x comma y. So x comma y are two variables that we are using in the function. So after using these two variables, what we are doing, we are printing a message x plus y. X plus y we are printing. What we are basically doing, we are adding the result of x plus y. Means whatever the number we will move in the function, it will give us the desired result. Now after that I have called this function. The function name was add. So I have called that function and added the argument 5 comma 8. Then in the other argument I have changed the values. I have given it as 10 comma 6. So whenever I will execute this program in the Python shell, you can see over here, whenever I have executed this, first result you can see that the output is 13 because 5 plus 8 is equals to 13. Then I'm having the output 10 plus 6 equals to 16. So whenever we are using arguments, we are just giving the arguments to the function and performing some data upon it. Like if we want to add, if we want to subtract. One thing we need to keep in mind while using the arguments is that we need to use the print statement only in the function. We cannot use it outside the function where we are not given the definition of the function. We had some arguments to a function. Similarly, we can some return function. So when we are talking about return function basically means returning a value. So returning a value will only work when we have an integer type function or we have a string type function. So when we are talking about a integer type function, basically the return will be that if we are checking a alternative in both the cases, that what value will be returned. So here we have taken an example of checking a largest number of a and b. So what I am using, I am defining a function def largest number a comma b. Then I have given a if statement. If a is greater than equals to b, then it will return a, else it will return b. So whenever I am using this function, when I will call this function, I have given two values 4, 11. So in this case, you can directly see that a is smaller and 11 is the biggest. So whenever I will execute this program, I will see that the resultant output I will get is 11 because 11 is the largest number. It is returning that value which is the larger value. In functions, we also need to understand that whenever we are using a return statement, it will be terminated as soon as the return statement get executed. For example, if the number was a was bigger, return a was written. As soon as it will get return a, the execution will be terminated and the program will be stopped. So here, as soon as it will get return b, the function will be stopped and will not again check the function. So whenever I am getting the return 0, the execution of the function will be terminated. We can also use functions as objects. Now when we are talking about using function as objects means that we can hold it in a variable and then use it again. For example, like we store some data in a variable, like I am storing a value of a equals to 10. Similarly, in a variable, I can store the function and then call it. For example, let us take an example. I need to calculate the product of the two numbers. I have taken the two numbers f and g. Then I have declared in the function that it will return f into g. Means the result of the multiplication of two numbers f into g will be returned in the function. Here I have declared the value of f as 10, g as 20. Then I have taken a variable store in which I am storing the product. Product is the function name. So I am storing the product in the store value variable. After that I am using the print statement. In print statement you can see I have not used the function name, but I have used the variable that is stored and passing the argument f comma g. So whenever I will pass these arguments, it will take 10 and 20 and then give me the resultant output as 200, as you can see in the output. We have understood that how we can define a function, how we can give a module to the function. Similarly, we have some modules. In a module, it is similar way to a function, but the difference is that we can get the sets from the library of the Python shell and then we can perform the task based upon it. Modules are basically if we want to use some functions which are inbuilt in the library. For example, if you want to use a math function which is already built in the library. So basic syntax of a module is from module name and then the import variable, or we can simply write it as import or module name. So here we are taking an example of importing the modules and how we can use it. For example, I'm taking a function over here as a square root. So what I am doing, from math means math is a library from where I'm importing a variable name as square root and using it as square root function. So whenever I will print square root of a particular number, I will get the resultant output as it is imported from the math function, and these are the set of modules which are already defined in a function. We can also create our own modules with the help of function, like how we can define a function and how we can implement a function. I think you must be clear about how do we define a function, how do we give arguments to a function, how we use it as an object, and how we can use modules. So guys, if you understand what I told you, please do like, share and subscribe to my channel. And also for the detailed notes, you can visit the link given in my description about my website, and also you can contact me with my Instagram. I've given that also in my description. So guys, thank you so much for watching.